The jungle was alive with sound. Birds called from high in the branches. Insects hummed around the leaves, and the air carried the heavy scent of earth and rain. Thomas stepped carefully, pushing aside vines that had wrapped themselves across the faint trail. His boots sank into the soft ground, and every step seemed to be swallowed by the endless green that surrounded him. Thomas was not alone. Behind him walked Lena, who carried a map folded inside a weathered notebook, and Raoul, who held a lantern even though the sunlight still filtered through the canopy. The three had traveled for days, following the stories of a hidden chamber that had remained untouched for centuries. Most people had dismissed the stories as legends, but Thomas believed there was truth buried beneath the jungle floor. They moved slowly, guided by stone markers half hidden beneath roots and moss. The carvings on the stones were worn, but they still carried the shape of symbols Thomas had studied for years. He brushed the dirt away with his hand and whispered almost to himself, "These are Maya signs. This is the path." Lena leaned close, her eyes bright with excitement. "Then the story is real. The chamber must be near." She pressed her notebook against the stone and copied the markings with quick strokes. She had always been the careful one, recording every detail so that nothing would be lost when they returned. Raoul, less patient, shifted the lantern in his hand. "We have been walking for days. All I see is the same trees, the same vines. If this chamber is real, it hides well." Thomas looked up at the canopy above. The sunlight reached them in narrow beams, turning the air into a haze of gold and green. "That is the point. If it was easy, it would have been found long ago. The king wanted it hidden." The jungle pressed closer around them as they moved forward. Branches brushed against their shoulders, and the ground sloped downward into a valley where the air grew cooler. The sound of water echoed nearby, and soon they reached a stream that cut through the earth. Across the stream stood a wall of stone nearly covered in thick moss and vines. Raoul stopped and raised his lantern. "That looks man-made," Thomas nodded. "It is. This is the first marker of the chamber." They crossed the stream carefully, stepping from stone to stone until they reached the wall. The surface was rough, but under Thomas's touch he felt carved lines. He drew his knife and scraped away the moss, revealing a pattern beneath. Slowly an image came into view, a figure seated on a throne holding a staff that pointed upward toward a cluster of stars. Lena gasped. "This is no simple carving. Look, the stars are arranged in patterns we do not see from here." Thomas traced the star cluster with his finger. They match constellations far from Earth. Whoever made this carving wanted to show a connection beyond this world. The three stood in silence for a moment, staring at the ancient stone. The jungle around them seemed to quiet as if listening. Raoul finally broke the silence. So the story was true. The Maya king hid something here, but why carve stars that no one could recognize unless they had seen them before? Thomas lowered his hand. "That is what we are here to find out. This wall is only the beginning. The path continues beyond it." They searched along the wall until Lena found a narrow opening half hidden by roots. It was just wide enough for one person to slip through. She pointed at it and smiled. There, the hidden path. One by one they entered, ducking beneath the tangled roots and squeezing through the opening. On the other side lay a narrow corridor of stone, cool and silent. The air was heavy with the scent of age, as though the walls themselves had been sealed for centuries. Their lantern lit the passage, and for the first time, the explorers felt the weight of the discovery pressing on them. This was no ordinary ruin. It was a place untouched by time, waiting for someone brave enough to walk its path. As they moved deeper, Thomas felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. He thought of the old stories that spoke of a golden chamber guarded by secrets. He thought of the Maya king who was said to have ruled not only with power, but with knowledge that came from beyond the stars. If those stories were true, then they were standing at the edge of something greater than treasure. The corridor turned sharply, and the light of the lantern fell upon another carving. This one showed a circle of figures, their hands raised toward a bright object in the sky. Around them were strange shapes that looked like ships, but not of the sea. Raoul stared at the image, his voice low. "These look like vessels of the air." Thomas nodded slowly. "Or vessels of the stars." Lena's hand trembled as she sketched the carving into her notebook. She looked at her companions with wide eyes. "This is not only history. This is a message." The three continued forward, the path ahead lit by the lantern's glow. The air grew colder and the silence deepened. Every step carried them closer to the heart of the mystery. and each carving they passed seemed to whisper that they were being guided. At last, the corridor opened into a wide chamber where the ceiling disappeared into shadow. In the center stood a great stone door, sealed tight, its surface covered with symbols that shimmered faintly in the lantern light. Thomas stepped forward, his voice steady. "We have found it. The golden chamber lies beyond this door." The jungle outside still sang with life, but within the stone walls time seemed to stop. The hidden path had led them here, and the true discovery was only beginning. The great stone door stood before them, silent and unmoving. Its carvings shimmered faintly in the lantern light, as if touched by something more than time. Thomas reached out and placed his palm against the cool surface. The stone felt alive, as though it was listening. Raoul raised his lantern higher, studying the strange patterns. "This door does not look like anything I have seen before. It is not only Maya. The symbols are different. Some are sharp and curved in ways I cannot explain." Lena opened her notebook and compared her sketches. She turned the pages quickly, her eyes scanning. "Look here. These symbols repeat on the wall outside, but on the door they form a circle almost like a map. I think this is more than decoration. It is a message." Thomas nodded slowly. He had studied ruins for years, but he had never seen anything like this. The carvings did not only speak of kings and gods. They hinted at journeys, at stars, at something greater than the jungle around them. The three explorers stepped back and lowered their voices, as if the chamber itself demanded respect. Thomas spoke first. "The Maya were known for their knowledge of the sky. They followed the stars, the planets, the movements of time. But this goes further. These carvings suggest they knew of places beyond our world." Lena's hand trembled as she touched the lines of the circle. If that is true, then the old story is real. The Maya king did not hide gold. He hid knowledge. Raoul frowned, though his eyes shone with curiosity. Knowledge is valuable, but it does not feed a village. Why guard it so carefully? Why seal it behind this door? Thomas looked at him. Because knowledge can be greater than treasure. It can change how we see the world. They stood in silence for a long moment. The jungle sounds outside were distant, muffled by the stone walls. Inside, only the soft crackle of the lantern filled the air. The explorers knew they had reached something important, something that touched both history and mystery. At last, Thomas spoke again. "The story says that the king was not only a ruler but also a guardian. If this is true, he must have been guarding more than his own wealth. He was guarding a gift from somewhere else." Lena's eyes widened. "You mean from the stars?" "Yes," Thomas answered quietly. "From the stars." The thought filled the chamber with new weight. The explorers were no longer searching for ruins. They were uncovering a secret that could reshape their understanding of the past. They set up camp near the stone door, building a small fire to keep the damp air at bay. As the flames flickered, Lena read aloud from her notebook, repeating the legends she had collected from the villagers. One story says the king met beings who came down on wings of light. They gave him a crystal filled with power. Another story says he built a chamber of gold, not for riches, but to hold the crystal safely. Only those who follow the hidden path could find it. Raoul poked at the fire and shook his head. Wings of light, crystals of power. These sound like tales told to children. Lena looked at him firmly. And yet here we sit at the door of a chamber no one has seen for centuries. Do you still think they are only tales? Raoul fell silent, though his expression softened. He had followed Thomas and Lena out of loyalty, not belief. But now, faced with the carvings and the hidden path, doubt began to fade. Thomas spoke again, his voice calm but steady. The people of the village kept the story alive for a reason. Legends are often built on truth. The king must have wanted the future to know. He left these signs for us. The fire crackled. Shadows danced across the stone walls, making the carvings seem to move. The circle on the door glimmered faintly in the shifting light, as if responding to their presence. That night none of them slept easily. The jungle outside whispered, the trees shifting in the wind, and deep inside the chamber the carvings seemed to hum with hidden energy. Each of them felt it, the sense that they were standing at the edge of something vast. In the morning they woke to soft sunlight spilling through the opening in the wall. Lena carefully packed her notebook. Raoul adjusted the lantern and Thomas studied the carvings again. He noticed something new, small holes at the edge of the circle, each one shaped like a key slot. Look here, Thomas said, pointing. This door requires something to open. Without it, we cannot pass. Lena leaned close. Then the key must be hidden along the path. Perhaps more carvings will guide us, Raoul sighed but nodded. Then we keep moving. The legend has reawakened, and we must see it through. They left the chamber and stepped back into the jungle. The air outside was warm and thick, filled with the sounds of life. Yet now the forest felt different. It was no longer only a place of roots and vines. It was a guardian, holding secrets in its heart. As they walked, Thomas could not stop thinking of the star maps on the walls, of the ships carved into stone. The Maya king had left behind more than history. He had left a bridge between Earth and the stars. The explorers did not know what they would find, but they knew one thing for certain. The story of the Golden Chamber was far greater than any of them had imagined. And now, it had begun to awaken. The jungle morning was bright, but inside the ancient path the air stayed cool and dim. Tomas led the way, his eyes searching for any sign that might guide them closer to the key for the stone door. Behind him, Lena carried her notebook ready, while Raoul held the lantern that painted the walls with soft gold. They followed a winding passage, where roots broke through cracks in the stone and the scent of damp earth filled their lungs. At first the walls were bare, but soon carvings appeared again. These were smaller than before, running in long rows, almost like sentences. Thomas brushed the dust away with his hand. "These are words," he said quietly, "but not all in Maya script. Some look familiar, some do not." Lena leaned close, her eyes narrowing. They repeat. "Look, this shape appears again and again beside the symbol for sky. Maybe it means star or world." Raoul tilted his head. "Or it could be the name of something. A place, perhaps," Thomas nodded. "Yes, maybe a place." The chamber was not built only to guard something, it was built to tell a story. They moved further, the carvings growing larger. Soon the walls opened into a small chamber, circular in shape. The ceiling rose above them with a hole that allowed a single beam of sunlight to fall upon the floor. At the center of the circle lay a slab of stone, its surface carved with a star map. Lena gasped, dropping to her knees beside it. "This is incredible. Look, these stars are the same ones we saw outside on the wall. But here there are more, with lines connecting them like paths between worlds." Thomas knelt beside her, running his fingers along the etched paths. "These are not random. They mark a journey. This is the first discovery, the map of where they came from." Raoul stood with the lantern raised, staring at the slab. Whoever made this knew more than the sky above their heads. They must have seen beyond Earth. Lena traced one of the lines carefully with her finger. "Look here, Thomas. This line begins at a star we know, but it ends at a symbol I have never seen. It looks almost like the crystal from the legend." Tomas's eyes lit up. "Then that must be the key. The crystal is not only a treasure, it is the key to opening the Golden Chamber." As they studied the map, the sunlight shifted, moving slowly across the stone floor. When the beam touched the strange symbol Lena had pointed to, the chamber changed. The carvings on the slab glowed faintly as if awakened by the light. The explorers stared in awe. Raoul whispered, "It moves. It breathes. The map is alive." The glow spread across the lines, lighting the paths like rivers of fire. The chamber filled with soft light, and for the first time the explorers felt they were not alone. Something in the stone had been waiting for them, waiting for anyone who would follow the path. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the glow faded. The sunlight moved on, and the slab returned to silence. Lena pressed her hand to her chest. It was a message, a signal. The chamber showed us the way. Tomas stood slowly, his face calm but determined. "The map tells us that the key exists, and it shows where it is hidden. We must follow it," Raoul frowned. "But the lines point to places far away, maybe even beyond this world." "How can we follow that?" Tomas looked back at the slab. "The Maya king must have found a way. If he placed the key in this jungle, then there will be signs we can follow. The carvings will guide us." They left the circular chamber with renewed purpose. As they walked, they found more carvings, figures of people reaching upward, holding crystals, standing beside ships shaped like crescent moons. The carvings grew clearer, almost as if the artists wanted the message to be unmistakable. Hours passed as they followed the corridor deeper into the earth. At last they reached another chamber smaller than the first. Here, on a pedestal of stone, lay a single object covered in dust. Lena rushed forward and brushed it clean with her sleeve. Her eyes widened. "It is a crystal, just like the legend. The The crystal was clear, but within it swirled faint lines of light like stars caught in a storm. Thomas lifted it carefully, and as he did, the walls of the chamber lit up. The carvings shone, each figure glowing with soft light. Raoul stepped back in awe. "It answers to you," Thomas shook his head. "Not to me. To anyone who is ready to carry it. This is the key the king left behind." The crystal pulsed once, faint but strong, as though alive. The explorers looked at each other, their faces filled with wonder. They had found the first piece of the puzzle, the first true discovery of the golden chamber. Lena whispered, "Now the legend is no longer a story. It is real." Thomas closed his hand gently around the crystal. He felt its warmth, its quiet strength. "Then we must return to the stone door. This will open the path ahead." The three of them turned back, the lantern light guiding their way. The jungle above remained untouched, the air filled with birds and insects, but deep below the surface history had stirred. The first discovery was made, and the golden chamber waited for them. The crystal glowed faintly in Thomas's hand as they stepped back into the great stone chamber. The door loomed before them, heavy and silent, its surface covered with the circle of strange symbols. Raoul lifted the lantern high, and the carvings sparkled in the light as if waiting for something. Thomas held the crystal up to the door. For a long moment, nothing happened. The air in the chamber felt still, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Then the crystal pulsed once, sending out a soft wave of light. The symbols on the door answered. They began to glow one by one, forming a circle that shone with golden fire. Lena gasped and stepped back, her eyes wide with amazement. "It is reacting. The key belongs here." Raoul stared at the circle of light. "I never thought I would see stone come alive." The glow spread outward across the entire surface of the door, tracing every line, every curve. The air grew warmer, and a low hum filled the chamber, rising from the stone itself. Thomas felt the vibration beneath his feet, steady and deep like the beating of a heart. He placed the crystal into the largest of the slots carved into the circle. The moment it touched the stone, the hum grew louder. The door shook, dust falling from the ceiling above. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, the great stone door began to move. Slowly, it shifted backward, then slid open to the side, revealing a darkness beyond. The air that poured out was cool, untouched for centuries, carrying the scent of earth, stone, and something faintly metallic. Lena clutched her notebook to her chest. Her voice hushed. "We are the first to see this in hundreds of years." Raoul's face, usually calm, now showed awe. "It is not treasure we will find here. It is something greater." Thomas nodded but said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the opening. He could feel that they were stepping into more than history. They were stepping into a story that had waited to be told. The three entered together, lantern light stretching ahead into the chamber. At first, the walls were bare, smooth stone polished to a shine. But as they moved deeper, patterns emerged, rows of golden plates fixed into the walls, each etched with symbols. The plates reflected the lantern's glow, filling the space with a soft golden light. Lena ran her fingers across the nearest plate. "This is knowledge, Thomas. Look at the writing. These are records, not decorations." Thomas examined another plate. The lines were sharp, precise, almost too perfect to have been carved by hand. "This is not only Maya writing. These symbols are the same ones we saw outside, the ones that look like maps of the stars." The chamber stretched on, lined with golden plates from floor to ceiling. At the far end stood a throne of pure metal, shining faintly even in the dim light. Above it, the ceiling arched high into shadow, and set into the stone was a single great disk carved with stars. Raoul raised the lantern. "This is the chamber of the king." Thomas stepped closer to the throne. It was not like any seat he had seen before. Its surface was smooth and polished, almost like glass, and across the armrest were patterns that resembled controls. He reached out but stopped just short of touching. "This is not made for ceremony. This is made for function. The king sat here to command something." Lena's eyes followed his gaze to the great disk above. Maybe he commanded the stars. They walked slowly around the chamber, studying every detail. On the walls were images of ships, sleek curved vessels that rose into the sky. The ships were shown leaving Earth, moving toward constellations far away. The figures carved beside them were not afraid. They looked proud, as if they belonged among the stars. Raoul's voice was quiet. "This is not only a chamber of gold. It is a memory of a people who dreamed beyond the sky." At the center of the room, near the base of the throne, they found another pedestal. Upon it rested a second crystal, larger than the first, glowing faintly with inner light. Thomas lifted it carefully. The crystal was warm, and within it swirled lines of gold like rivers of fire. As he held it, the golden plates on the walls lit up. One by one, they began to glow until the entire chamber shone with a steady light. The throne glimmered, and the great disk above came alive, displaying a map of stars across the ceiling. Lena gasped. "It is a star chart. Look, these paths connect worlds. This is the knowledge the king protected." Thomas stared upward, his heart racing. The stars moved slowly across the disk, tracing lines, forming shapes. The map was not static. It was alive, showing the journey of something that had traveled long ago. Raoul stood with his lantern lowered, his face lit by the golden glow. "Now I understand." The king was not hiding treasure. He was hiding this, a chamber of knowledge left by those who came before. The explorers stood together in the center of the glowing room, surrounded by light and history. The golden chamber had opened, and with it, the legend of the Maya king was no longer only words. It was truth carved in gold and lit by the stars. Thomas held the second crystal close. He felt its power not as wealth but as wisdom. The chamber was not a tomb nor a vault of treasure. It was a message, a gift for the future. He turned to Lena and Raoul, his voice steady. "This is only the beginning. What lies here is meant to prepare us for something greater. The king wanted us to remember that humanity does not belong only to the earth. We belong to the stars." The chamber glowed around them, alive with light and memory. The golden chamber had finally opened, and its secrets were ready to be told. The golden chamber glowed softly around them. Every plate on the wall shone with warm light, and the star map above moved with slow, steady grace. Thomas held the second crystal in his hands, its golden rivers of light swirling within as if alive. The air was heavy with meaning, as though the chamber itself waited for them to listen. Lena stood closest to the throne, her eyes fixed on the glowing plates. "These are not only carvings. They are records. Look how the light moves across them. It feels as if they are alive." Raoul lowered his lantern, for the chamber no longer needed it. Golden light bathed the walls, reflecting in his eyes. If this is a record, then maybe it can speak. Maybe the king left us his words. Thomas stepped toward the throne, his boots echoing softly on the stone floor. The patterns on the armrests glimmered faintly, as if responding to his presence. He placed the second crystal into a small hollow in the base of the throne. At once the room changed. The star map above them grew brighter, and the glow from the walls merged into a single point of light at the center of the throne. Slowly the light rose upward and took shape. Before them appeared a figure, not of flesh but of light and shadow. He wore the headdress of a Maya king, feathers spread wide, golden bands across his chest and arms. His face was calm, his eyes deep and steady, as though he looked not only at the explorers but through them. Lena pressed her notebook against her chest, her breath caught. "It is him, the king." The figure raised his hand, and his voice filled the chamber. It was not harsh or loud. It was strong, clear, and carried weight. "I am the guardian of the golden chamber. If you hear my voice, then you have followed the path and carried the key. Know that what you see is not treasure, but truth. This chamber holds the story of a gift given to my people long ago." The explorers stood frozen, listening. The voice carried no anger, no fear, only purpose. The figure continued. "In the time of my reign there came travelers from the stars. They did not come with war nor with chains. They came with knowledge. They showed us the paths of the heavens, the patterns of worlds, and the ways of building beyond stone and earth. From them I received a crystal that holds their memory. They told me to guard it, for the day would come when those who follow would need it." Thomas's eyes widened. The travelers were real. The legends spoke true. The king's image turned toward the great disk of stars above. His hand moved, and the constellations shifted, forming new shapes. "These are the places they showed me. Worlds with life, worlds with light, and worlds with shadows. They warned me that not all who travel the stars wish for peace. Some seek only to take, to destroy, to silence. They said humanity must be ready for the day when the shadows come." Lena whispered almost to herself. "This is not only a record. It is a warning." The figure of the king nodded as though hearing her. "Yes, a warning. And a promise. The chamber was built not for my time, but for yours. The crystal you hold is the key to more than this chamber. It is the beginning of your preparation. Carry it, learn from it, and do not let fear silence you. When the shadows come, humanity must rise. The words filled the chamber like thunder rolling through the earth. Raoul, usually the skeptic, stood with his mouth slightly open, his voice low. The king believed we would face something far greater than ourselves. The figure's gaze moved back to them. I guarded this knowledge until the end of my life. I hid it here in the jungle where only those with courage and patience could find it. You are the ones chosen by time. What you do now will shape what is to come. Slowly, the light of the figure began to fade, the edges of his form dissolving into golden mist. His final words echoed softly through the chamber. Remember, humanity is not alone, and the day of trial will come. Then the figure was gone. The throne dimmed, the star map above grew faint, and the chamber returned to its steady glow. The explorers stood in silence. For a long time, none of them spoke. The weight of the message hung heavy in their hearts. At last, Lena found her voice. We were searching for history, but we found a call to the future. This is greater than anything we imagined. Thomas looked down at the crystal in his hand. Its golden rivers of light still swirled, calm and steady. The king trusted us. He trusted that someone would come who could carry this knowledge forward. Now it is ours to protect. Raoul shook his head slowly, still staring at the throne. And what happens if we fail? What if we cannot rise when the shadows come? Thomas met his eyes, his voice firm. Then we must make sure we do not fail. That is why the king left this for us. To give us the chance to prepare. They stood together in the glowing chamber, 3 explorers who had set out in search of legend and had found something far greater. The message of the king was clear. Humanity's story was larger than they had believed, and the golden chamber was not an ending but a beginning. Thomas closed his hand around the crystal. He felt its warmth, its steady pulse. Whatever lay ahead, he knew they were no longer walking in darkness. The king's voice would guide them, and humanity's future had been set in motion. The golden chamber had fallen quiet after the king's message faded, but the silence was not empty. It carried weight like the stillness before a storm. Thomas still held the crystal in his hand, its golden light swirling as if alive. Raoul and Lena stood beside him, both lost in thought. None of them had expected their search for a lost chamber to turn into a message about the future of humanity. Finally, Lena broke the silence. We cannot keep this only to ourselves. This knowledge belongs to all people. The king wanted it carried forward. Raoul frowned. But how will anyone believe us? We are only 3 explorers. If we return and tell others we spoke with the spirit of a Maya king, who warned us about shadows from the stars, they will laugh. Thomas looked down at the crystal. Maybe they would. But if this crystal holds what the king said it does, then it is more than words. It is proof. Lena nodded, her eyes steady. Yes, and it is also a responsibility. If the shadows he spoke of are real, then waiting could be dangerous. We need to act. Raoul rubbed his chin, pacing slowly. Act how? We do not even know what the shadows are. They could be stories meant to guide his people, not real threats. Thomas shook his head. No, he knew. The way he spoke, the way the chamber was built. This was not only for his time, it was for ours. The shadows may not be here yet, but they will come. The weight of his words hung in the air. Raoul stopped pacing, and for the first time there was no doubt in his eyes. He believed too. The 3 of them left the chamber after hours of studying the walls and recording what they could. The jungle felt different now. The calls of birds, the whisper of leaves, the soft rumble of distant thunder. All of it seemed sharper, heavier, as though the world itself had shifted. Days later, they reached their camp near the river. Their supplies were worn thin, but their spirits carried something stronger than food or water. They carried the king's message. One night, as rain fell softly over the canopy, Thomas sat by the fire staring at the crystal. Raoul cleaned his tools nearby, while Lena wrote in her notebook. The flickering light made the golden rivers within the crystal seem alive. Suddenly, the crystal pulsed just once with a brighter glow. Thomas sat upright. Did you see that? Raoul looked up. See what? The crystal, it responded. As if it heard me. Lena set down her notebook and leaned closer. Try speaking again. Maybe it is not only a record. Maybe it can guide us. Thomas held the crystal in both hands, steadying his breath. If you can hear us, show us what we must do. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the glow of the crystal spread outward, filling their small camp with golden light. The rain seemed to vanish into silence, and the three explorers found themselves standing not in the jungle but beneath a vast field of stars. The ground under their feet was not soil but light. Above them, constellations shifted and formed patterns. A soft voice filled the space. It was not the king this time, but a chorus, many voices woven into one. You hold the key to memory. We gave it to your ancestors, and they guarded it well. Now you must decide. The shadows are not far. They move between stars, silent waiting. Humanity must prepare. Lena clutched Tomas's arm, her eyes wide. This is real. The travelers still speak. The voices continued. Knowledge is your shield. Unity is your strength. Do not turn against one another, for the shadows thrive on division. Carry this light to your people and it will grow. Slowly the vision faded. The campfire returned. The rain's patter filled their ears, and the crystal dimmed back to its gentle glow. Raoul's hands trembled as he picked up his pack. We cannot wait. We must return home and show the world. Thomas nodded, though worry lined his face. Yes, but the world is not always ready for truth. We must be careful. If leaders see this as power instead of warning, they may misuse it. Lena spoke with calm certainty. Then it is up to us to guide it. The king trusted us. The travelers trusted humanity. We must not fail them. The journey back through the jungle was long and hard. Storms slowed their steps, rivers rose and forced them to find new paths, and fatigue pressed down on them. But every challenge seemed lighter compared to the burden they carried. The crystal pulsed faintly at night as though reminding them that they were not alone. At last they reached the edge of the jungle. Beyond it stretched the roads that would carry them back to cities, to people, to leaders. They stopped one last time, standing together at the boundary of wild and civilization. Raoul looked back at the dark canopy. That chamber will remain hidden, will it not? Others may find it one day. Thomas held up the crystal. Yes, but even if they do, its voice will not matter unless we act. The real test begins now. Lena adjusted her pack and stepped forward. The shadows are coming. We may not know when, but we will be ready. We have to be. The three of them walked on, their figures small against the wide horizon, but their mission vast. They carried with them not only the memory of a Maya king, but the voice of travelers from the stars and the hope of an entire world. And far above, unseen by human eyes, a cluster of dark shapes moved slowly between the stars. Silent, patient, watching. The long journey through the jungle was over, but for Thomas, Lena, and Raoul, the true journey had only begun. The city greeted them with noise and movement, a sharp contrast to the quiet whispers of the forest. Cars honked, people hurried through the streets, and neon signs lit the night sky. Yet as they stepped into this modern world, each of them carried the weight of the golden chamber within their hearts. They rented a small room near the university where Lena had studied. The first night they sat together at a wooden table, the crystal glowing faintly between them. Raoul leaned forward, his hands clasped. We need to decide how much we reveal. If we show this to the wrong people, they will see it as power, not a warning. Lena tapped her notebook. It was filled with drawings of the star map, the figure of the king and the shifting constellations they had witnessed. The message is clear. Unity, knowledge, preparation. If we hold it back, then we fail the trust given to us. But Raoul is right. There are those who may twist it. Thomas lifted the crystal. Golden rivers of light flowed within, calm and steady. The king and the travelers gave this to us not to hide forever but to carry forward. Humanity must choose its path. But maybe we should not go directly to leaders. Perhaps the people must hear first. The following weeks were filled with planning. Lena contacted scholars she trusted, people who valued truth over politics. Raoul reached out to old friends in science circles, ones who would not dismiss unusual discoveries. Thomas studied the crystal, learning how its light responded to touch, thought, and even sound. Each night the crystal pulsed with quiet warmth, as though guiding them step by step. At last they arranged a small gathering in one of the university halls. A group of professors, historians, scientists, and students came together, curious about what the three explorers had uncovered. The lights dimmed as Thomas placed the crystal on a stand. Golden light filled the room and a hushed silence fell over the crowd. Slowly the crystal projected the vision of the star map. Constellations shifted, worlds appeared, and the voice of the king echoed once again. I am the guardian of the golden chamber. What you see is not treasure, but truth. Gasps filled the hall as the glowing figure spoke. No one moved. No one doubted. The king's message reached their ears as it had once reached Thomas, Lena, and Raoul. When the vision ended, the silence stretched. Then a professor stood, her eyes shining. This changes everything. History, science, our place in the universe. We are not alone. But another man, a historian with sharp features, frowned. Or perhaps it is a trick. Who can say this is not created by clever hands? Do you not see the danger? If governments believe this is real, they will fight to control it. Murmurs rose in the room. Fear and wonder mixed together, battling for space in every heart. Lena raised her voice, calm but strong. The king's message was clear. The shadows are real and unity is our only shield. This is not for control, not for one nation or one people. It is for all of humanity. Raoul added, if we divide, if we fight among ourselves, then the shadows will win before they even arrive. That is what the travelers warned. For hours the group debated. Some demanded secrecy. Others wanted open truth. Some feared panic, while others longed for preparation. In the end, no clear answer was found. But one thing was certain. The world could no longer remain the same. News spread slowly at first, whispered between scholars, then carried into circles of thinkers and dreamers. Soon, questions rose in the public. Strange lights in the jungle, old legends speaking of visitors from the stars, 3 explorers who had returned with proof. As attention grew, pressure mounted. Governments began asking questions. Journalists knocked at doors. The crystal pulsed brighter as if sensing the weight of humanity's choice pressing closer. One evening, the 3 explorers gathered once more, tired but unbroken. Thomas placed the crystal on the table. The world stands at the edge of choice. If we let fear guide it, the message will die. If we let greed guide it, the message will twist. But if we stand with courage, maybe the message will grow. Lena smiled faintly, though her eyes were weary. The king spoke of shadows, but he also spoke of light. Perhaps the true test is not what comes from the stars, but what we choose here, on this earth. Raoul sighed, then nodded. Then let us stand with courage. Even if the world doubts us, even if it turns away, we will hold the truth. One day they will see. Together they placed their hands on the crystal. It glowed brighter than ever before, filling the room with warmth and light. For a moment, the 3 of them felt the presence of the king, steady and strong, and the echo of the travelers' voices, gentle yet firm. You are not alone. Rise together. The light faded, but its warmth remained in their hearts. Outside, the world moved forward, uncertain and divided, but no longer blind. Humanity had been given a choice, and though the shadows waited beyond the stars, so too did the strength to face them. As dawn broke the next morning, Thomas, Lena, and Raoul stepped outside. The city was waking, filled with ordinary lives, unaware of the storm or the light that lay ahead. But the explorers walked with quiet resolve. They knew their journey was not the end of a story, but the beginning of one. For hidden in the heart of humanity was the same truth the Maya king had carried, the same promise the travelers had left. A truth that whispered through the ages, waiting for the day it would rise again. And now, that day had come.